the quiet college town of Moscow, Idaho, nestled among pine trees and winding roads, life had always felt safe. The kind of place where front doors were often left unlocked, where students at the University of Idaho walked home late at night without fear. It wasn't the kind of town you'd expect to make national headlines. But on the morning of November 13th, 2022, everything changed. That morning, a 911 call came in around 11:58 a.m. A report of an unconscious person at 1122 King Road, a 3-story off-campus house known for its social gatherings and student residence. Officers from the Moscow Police Department arrived, expecting perhaps a student who had passed out from a long night out. What they found inside was something far worse, something that would shake the town and the nation to its core. 4 University of Idaho students had been murdered. Their names were Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. All between the ages of 20 and 21. Bright young lives, taken in a way that no one could understand. Kaylee and Madison were lifelong best friends. They had been inseparable since 6th grade. Both were seniors, ready to graduate and take on the world. Kaylee had recently adopted a golden doodle and was about to move to Texas for a new job. Madison was known for her kindness and her ever-present smile. Zana and Ethan were a couple, happy, full of energy. Zana lived in the house on King Road, and Ethan, who was a triplet, had been staying over that night. The crime scene was brutal. Police would later describe it as one of the most complex and disturbing they had ever encountered. The 4 students had been stabbed to death, likely in their sleep. 2 other roommates were inside the house at the time, but they were left unharmed. That detail, 2 survivors in a house where 4 others were killed, would become a central point of confusion and speculation. In the early hours of that Sunday, the house had been quiet on the outside. No one heard screams. No one called the police until hours later. Investigators believe the killings happened between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. Kaylee and Madison were found in the same bed. Zana and Ethan were on the 2nd floor. The 2 surviving roommates, who lived on the ground floor, said they had heard nothing. It seemed impossible. How could such a violent attack happen without waking anyone up? For days, the public was left with more questions than answers. Police held back details, saying they didn't want to compromise the investigation. But that silence only fueled the fire. Online sleuths, true crime followers, and conspiracy theorists flooded social media. Everyone had a theory. Some pointed fingers at the surviving roommates, others at ex-boyfriends or partygoers. The pressure on law enforcement was immense. Meanwhile, the families of the victims were desperate, grieving, confused, angry. Kaylee's father, Steve Goncalves, became a public voice, demanding answers, questioning the lack of progress. He spoke to reporters, pushing for transparency. He wanted justice, but he also wanted the truth. It wasn't until December 30th, nearly 7 weeks later, that a break came. Authorities announced the arrest of a suspect, 28-year-old Brian Kohberger, a PhD student studying criminology at Washington State University, just across the border from Moscow in Pullman, Washington. The news stunned everyone. A criminology student now charged with 4 counts of murder. Kohberger had been arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, thousands of miles from the crime scene. He had driven cross-country with his father after the semester ended, in a white Hyundai Elantra, the very car that police had been looking for in surveillance footage near the scene. But the connection wasn't just the car. Investigators had used a mix of technology and old-fashioned detective work to track him down. They had combed through cell phone records, surveillance videos, DNA evidence. One crucial piece, a knife sheath left at the scene, found near the bodies of Kaylee and Madison. On that sheath was DNA, not a match in any criminal database. But when investigators compared it to DNA taken from trash outside the Kohberger family home, it matched closely with Brian's father. That led them to Brian. His phone records showed he had been near the King Road house multiple times in the weeks before the murders. Once even at 2:42 a.m., just weeks before the killings. On the night of the murders, his phone was mysteriously off during the exact window of time the attack occurred. Then it turned back on around 4:48 a.m., far from the scene. The timeline grew more chilling. Kohberger had no known connection to the victims, no texts, no calls, no social media interactions that could be found. Yet he had been circling their home, watching, studying. Neighbors described him as quiet and awkward. Some students at WSU recalled he often dominated conversations in class, especially when it came to criminal psychology. One classmate said he was obsessed with serial killers, particularly how they got away with their crimes. Another said he once graded her harshly, only to apologize the next day and give her full credit. But it was the silence that followed the murders that chilled many the most. Kohberger returned to his routine. He went to class. He acted normal. He even had a follow-up appointment to have his car serviced. There was no sign of panic, no confession, no remorse. As the trial process began, new questions emerged. What was the motive? Was this a fantasy acted out? A desire to kill without being caught? Prosecutors haven't revealed a clear motive yet. Kohberger maintains his innocence. His legal team argues the evidence is circumstantial. That DNA on the knife sheath could have been transferred. That the timeline is not airtight. The court proceedings are ongoing and a trial has yet to begin. For the victims' families, the wait has been excruciating. Each of the 4 students left behind grieving parents, siblings, and friends. Candlelight vigils were held across the country. Thousands of people, many of them strangers, came to mourn, to show support. The University of Idaho held memorials, lit the campus in honor of the lives lost. Professors and classmates shared stories about Kaylee's infectious energy, Madison's loyalty, Zana's bold spirit, and Ethan's kindness. The Goncalves family started a foundation in Kaylee's name. They pushed for legal reforms and better protection for students. They still speak out, still fight, still hope for justice. The house on King Road was eventually boarded up. The university announced plans to demolish it, a gesture meant to help the healing process. But for many in the community, the memories remained vivid. That house became a symbol of the unthinkable, of how even the safest places can become scenes of horror. There are still many unanswered questions. Did Kohberger act alone? Was he watching the house for weeks? What did he think would happen afterward? Was it about control, power, the thrill? Or was it something darker, something we may never fully understand? And then there's the fear, the unease that lingers in college towns like Moscow. Students who once felt safe now double-check their locks. Parents hesitate before sending their children off to school. Professors notice a change in the classroom, an air of caution. It's hard to go back to normal after something like this. And yet, life does move forward, slowly, painfully. Friends gather to remember. Classes continue, the seasons change, but the wound remains. The Idaho murders weren't just a shocking crime. They were a reminder that violence doesn't always come from shadows. Sometimes it comes from familiar places, from people who walk among us, people we don't notice, people we never suspect. For those left behind, the search for answers continues. The desire for justice burns quietly. And the question that haunts everyone who hears this story is the same. Why? We may never fully know, but we can remember. Kaylee, Madison, Zana, Ethan, they were loved, they mattered, and their lives were cut short far too soon. In the end, this isn't just a story about a crime. It's a story about people, about 4 young lives full of dreams and potential. It's about families torn apart and a community learning to breathe again. It's about fear, yes, but also about resilience. As we try to make sense of what happened in that quiet Idaho town, we hold on to something deeper, our shared humanity, our grief, our hope for justice, and our need to remember. Because sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are true, and the ones that leave us asking, how well do we really know the people around us?